Welcome back. You're on Jones and Company today, and I'm your host, Brian Jones. Today we're interviewing Quinton Lightbourne. He's a senator, and he is the chairman of the Bahamas Development Bank. Having such a wonderful conversation.
Yes.
And I think one of the points I want to turn to now is something that you mentioned early on in our conversation. Focus on the family islands,
Yes.
right? You mentioned that there's the potential for cottage industries to pop up and actually turn into full-blown manufacturing facilities and packing plants and so on. Can you speak to us a little bit more about your vision for the Bahamas, the southern Bahamas?
Yes, definitely. My vision for the family islands, goes deep because my family heritage is from Auckland. And so, seeing how the evolution, of Auckland, I don't want to sound biased, but, I've been raised to say that, I say Auckland's people build this country, and so, a lot of persons didn't know Sir Lyndon Pinland, his mother is from Auckland, so, and also A.D. Hanna, born and raised in Auckland. And so these are a lot of the things that, that we must look at, but especially for the Southern Islands, I think, I go back to Cascarilla bark. I also go back into Luther in terms of pineapples, that we can now harness this potential into something that can be very groundbreaking. The Bahamas Development Bank, one of the key things that we want to do is really much expand. A lot of family islands don't even know about the Bahamas Development Bank anymore. There was a comment, one of the employees of the Bahamas Development Bank a few years back when they went to Luther, and they had a seminar or conference, and persons in Luther's like, what? The Bahamas Development Bank still around? And so it just shows where, if some aspects have fell down in terms of letting persons know the access to funding that's available for them. And I think that's very important. I think the family islands have so much potential in terms, as you also alluded to, like the Airbnb aspect, in terms of that market, in terms of persons that want to come to the family islands or want to come to the Bahamas, but don't want, say, a city vibe. Like they want to be able to have tranquility, great relaxation, miles of undisturbed beaches. And that is something that the country can still tap into, and I think that's very important. And I think the strength of our economy will be based on the family island development, and I think we have to be multi-pronged in our approach as a country, and we cannot exclude family islands in that process.
Certainly. So how would you say you're going to plan to get the word out to make sure that people are aware of the opportunities vis-a-vis the BDB?
Yeah. So one of the key things that we plan to do definitely is going to do an aerial assault, I would say, in terms of social media, videos, and those stuff like that. But also nothing beats the ground game, So we have to go actually in these family islands, have seminars, town hall meetings to let them know that, hey, the Bahamas Development Bank, this is what is accessible to you. This is what you can do. This is how we can assist and help. And I think that's very important. You have to go on the ground to let persons know that what is out there. Because, the fact of the matter is, you're not going to be able to catch everyone or certain demographics from just social media, videos here and there. Once persons go and see, can touch and feel you, then they know, okay, this is real. And so I think that's one of the key things that, that I plan to do as chairman of the Bahamas Development Bank, to expand and so that family islanders know exactly what is going on.
Fantastic. Can you speak to us a bit about the capacity of the Bahamas Development Bank in terms of balance sheet capacity? Is the bank well capitalized? And what is the funding potential within the current period?
Yeah. So the bank is very much capitalized. There's funding available. It fluctuates depend on the annual budget, but we have pretty much a working budget that usually is around the range of $4 to $6 million annually, and so in terms that's inclusive of payroll and all those other stuff, and so we do have a sizable amount that we can distribute for lending, but it is very much capitalized and very much in a position where we want to be prudent though. So, it's not where we just give out, we want to be prudent to know that, okay, that this is viable, that this has sufficient collateral, may not be as much as other commercial banks require, but we have a certain amount where we feel safe with this venture. And I think that's very important. And I think it brings home, understand of what is needed. Obviously, basing on certain variables, there will be certain incentives. But that is the idea of terms of development, like of helping, making dreams a reality for Bahamians. And that's a big thing, and most of the mail boats, right, were funded through the Bahamas Development Bank, which is still to this day a pillar of our economy, our national economy, because without mail boats, I mean, you can imagine how many family islands would be secured. And so that's one of the big accomplishments of the Bahamas Development Bank, for seeing the mailboat industry develop throughout the country. And I think stories and situations like that are not told. I know a lot of Bahamians don't know, the success stories of the Bahamas Development Bank, but that is what the process is, and that will continue to happen. And it goes true to like who I am as a person. You must expand and let persons know your story, because you cannot rely on anyone else to tell your story. You must be the narrator of your story, and you must be the narrator of your destination in life. And that is what I've learned, from my grandmother, my grandaunt. These are very important pillars and tools that a person should take in their own life, that be able to know that you must leave a lasting legacy in this world.
Indeed, indeed. So I understand that there must be many more applications and need than you have the capital to actually service, right?
Yes.
Can you speak to what are you doing to increase the capacity potentially of the BDB to perhaps fulfill more of the needs that are out there?
Well, definitely. Well, the simple success or simple answer to that is that if we have more success stories, we will have big, and we will be ensured to have more access to capital. If we have more and more success stories, as simple as that. And I think that is what we must continue to do, and that is why I, as chairman, will thrive to ensure that we have more successful stories, more successful business ventures throughout this country. Because if those companies grow and expand are good, it only increases and helps the country, and it helps the Bahamas Development Bank in a position where we can say, okay, this is what we've been doing, these are our success rates, and we can further expand from there.
Indeed, indeed. So in terms of the profitability of the bank, it's essentially obviously contingent on the actual investments that you're making.
Yes.
Right. So of course you have to be prudent in that approach. Can you speak a bit to your investment process, right?
Sure.
How rigorous is it, and what is it are you looking for in some of these companies?
Yeah. So the investment process, depending on the nature of the business, is vigorous. Because there are some avenues. I'll give RWACX as an example. As you know, that's an innovative, different crowdfunding, equity funding, a whole different viewpoint, which is what was new in the country. And so there were more questions that were asked, more stuff that we wanted to have answers for before a final decision is done, And so that's the process. I don't think it's extensive. It's very friendly, whereas we have a very efficient and qualified team to ask these questions and be able to assist and facilitate the answers. If they can't be provided, we can advise, where we could be possibly found, so we can encourage this economic empowerment. Like I said, I don't want to sound like a score tracker, but that is a big passion of mine, is that we must ensure that economic empowerment and the economic revolution of this country is fulfilled in our generation.
Indeed. And in terms of the actual your investment team, you mentioned a number of officers and so on. Are you looking to grow the human capacity of the BDB as well?
Well, in terms of growing the human capacity, we have a few positions that we're trying to refill, and that's pretty much where we're at now. Once we put in some key roles and positions are filled, then we'll be able to look at possibly expanding. But right now, we just want to fulfill the loopholes so that we can move forward. And I think the workforce right now at the Bahamas Development Bank is very it's very heavy in terms of millennials. Most of the workforce is 75-80% millennials, and so it shows about the mindset and the direction where the Bahamas Development Bank wants to go and our vision for the country.
Right, and so you find that you have sufficient resources internally to evaluate all these new cutting-edge industries and fields and businesses.
Definitely, and that is the key thing, because we want to encourage and stimulate that environment. And so, once these new ideas come, we want to be, okay, we heard about it, we understand it. So these are the questions that we have. We have I would say, man, an amazing staff in terms of persons that are very diverse, understand the demand, understand the needs of our country. And it goes back, like I said, like, the Bahamians, we love this country. Millennials love this country so near and dear. And that's something that, that I have to always, I feel impelled, that I have to, compelled, that I have to say that, because I don't want it to ever be lost in translation that, they're not as vocal or they're not as passionate. We are, and we're doing everything that we can do and will do to expand.
Certainly. Well, I can see that you're very passionate about your role. So that must help you cut through some of the red tape and roadblocks. Perhaps you could speak to us about some of the constraints that you're facing as an organization and how you're kind of breaking through some of these barriers.
Well, right now, I cannot say that there are any constraints. We've been able to, drive the boat, for lack of a better term, the way we see fit. I think it's expanding very well. I think we're on the right track. I think we have the right persons in place. We have the right mindset. And, I'm happy. And I think most persons at the Bahamas Development Bank can attest that they feel the exact same way in terms they feel revitalized. They feel as if that moving forward, we're on the right direction. And, the morale in the country and as well as Bahamas Development Bank has been boosted. And I think that's a great thing for any institution that plays such a pivotal role in the growth of our economy.
Indeed. So you mentioned that you're doing the BankBook Pro grants coming up now. That's for the orange economy.
Yes.
What other types of grant programs would you have coming up?
Yeah. So by the end of this year, we plan to launch the blue and the green grant program. We're still in the deliberation phase in terms of finalizing all the final details. We want to get this orange one out first because that has been a huge demand. After we had sent that out publicly, within an hour and a half, we already had 70 applicants. Wow. So it's going to be, we're going to know that we have so many applications that we have to go through, and we want to be able to do and put a cohesive plan together. And that's for me. We want to put something in place that so there's also a grading system where we want to ensure that the amount of millennials applied, the amount of women have applied, and so this is very important for the overall development of a country. We don't want to be exclusive to any particular class, any particular age group. We want to be cohesive to all, and I think that's very important. And so we want to be able to share this pie out, to ensure that we have a diverse country in every sense of the word.
Question, in terms of those grants, is there any follow-up or accountability after the fact? How does that work?
Yes, that's a very good question. We do have a comprehensive and SDI, a Specials Division Initiative, where they are responsible as well for follow-up. So it's not just we're going to give you a MacBook Pro and you go and do whatever you want. We're going to ensure that, that your business is viable. We're going to ensure, we say, what are you doing? How's your updates? And so we get able to see something from it. Because that's the important thing, that we have to be able to get some return and see, what we're doing, how we're advancing the Bahamian economy, especially in the orange economy. And that's a very key thing for me. I think definitely we have so much talent here in the arts. I think, definitely you see the passing of recently Sir Sidney Poitier. There's many talented Bahamians out here and many spares. And I think that's something that we must tap into. I think, I know for me, and for persons in the older generation, it wasn't like, you don't need to do this or do that. That's what needs to do on the side. But, I think that there needs to be more inclusion of it. And I think that there's so much potential in that avenue that we must tap into.
Amazing. Yes, there's amazing potential here. And, it's fantastic that we have these types of initiatives coming up, especially with the targeted focus on the different sectors of the economy that essentially we need to focus on, like you're saying, to diversify the economy even better. So outside of the orange and the blue and the green, you're making loans, right, ad hoc to new businesses, ongoing business, as you mentioned before. Can you speak a bit more specifically about how the loans work? We talked about the process, but what about the terms and conditions for these loans?
Okay, so the terms and conditions of the loan, once we establish if the loan will be approved, there's a fixed rate that we would also, depending on the size and the amount, an interest rate that will be determined, and also based on the amount that you're requesting, the tenure in terms of repayment. And I think that's very important in terms of collateral and security. Transportation has been something that was very important, as I stated, in regards to the mailboats. And so if you have a situation where we know the mailboat provider is assured a certain amount of money every month, so we know that that is pretty much considered a safe loan or a safe investment, because you know the funds are guaranteed in terms of repayment and stuff like that. And so those dictates based on the nature of the business. And so it can fluctuate, so there's no, say, set in stone standard, because other Caribbean development banks throughout the region have different standards. And we are pretty much mirror in terms of what they are doing as well. And that is how, it's a global standard. And that's what we follow by at the Bahamas Development Bank right now.
Understood. So in terms of collateral, what variety of collateral are you accepting for loans?
Definitely cash, and also if it's a real estate investment, then obviously property and stuff like that. So those are some of the things that are used heavily for collateral, you know, cash injection or line.
Understood. So what about like business loans where there's no land involved, and you know, of course, the entrepreneur, perhaps they don't have cash. That's why they're coming to you in the first place, right? How do you manage the situation where there's no collateral? Is there still a way to work a loan?
Well, definitely. So I would say one of the key things in terms with that, you know, so there's also the SBDC, Small Business Development Center. So those businesses that find themselves in a peculiar situation like that, where they have no collateral, no cash, anything, and it's a small startup, SBDC has been that intermediary to turn to be able to provide that initial assistance for startups from a small business perspective. And so that has been pretty much the buffer for us. So, and that is if we have situations like that, we try to say, you know, also take a look at the SBDC, because that may be a better fit or avenue for you at this juncture. And so those are the key things. You know, there's a difference between the SBDC and BDB, but it's still a partnership that we use hand in hand to assist Bahamians at whichever level they're at for the development of their business.
Very good. Very good. So you have a working relationship with the SBDC as well.
We have a great working relationship with them. And like I think it's a tandem, it's a best of both worlds situation. And I think, you know, definitely the Bahamas Development Bank will continue to foster a great relationship with the SBDC and the Bahamas Development Bank.
Certainly, yes. The entrepreneurs here, obviously, they need all the support they can get, right? The cost of living, the cost of doing business, and even the ease of doing business in this country, you know, needs some improvement, right?
Definitely.
And I mean, to that point, does the BDB get involved in terms of broader government initiatives in dealing with ease of doing business and facilitating, you know, the I guess the well-being of your those who borrow from you or are involved in your programs?
Yeah, so we do get involved through and assist with the government in terms with that, to a larger extent, to a cursory level, because we have to ensure, we have to be a part of this economic development in a country. You know, it can't be, you can't develop a country without input from the Bahamas Development Bank. And so we've been able to be a part to give our views and opinions on how we need to expand. And I think that's very important. You know, the expansion of our country, as many Bahamians will continue to see, that more and more institutions like the Bahamas Development Bank, like SBDC, like the Bahamas Venture Capital Fund, like these are institutions that must be in place to facilitate this assistance for Bahamian businesses on and on and on. And, you know, it cannot be forgotten, it cannot be lost. You know, it must always be at the decision-making process. It's also about, for me, bringing in those gaps with the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce, being able to see how we can facilitate and merge things together. There's no hindrance in terms of what can and cannot be done, because they're all about helping Bahamian businessmen and businesswomen. And so I think that's very important moving forward. And I'm happy and satisfied with how we've been able to facilitate partnerships and facilitate relationships through government and other private entities to assist Bahamians.
Right. No, it's certainly important that the different government institutions collaborate. Right.
Yes.
It is one force, and obviously there's a lot of overlap. And you know, of course, for example, there's a digitalization initiative that's pretty much touching almost every single government department. Are you undertaking any sort of digitization initiatives?
Well, yeah. So I've been blessed that the Bahamas Development Bank has already began the digitalization process. And I can say from the outset, the Bahamas Development Bank is, I would say ahead of the curve in that aspect in terms of being all technology savvy in terms of what has been done. I'm of the view as well that I think more and more government agencies need to get more digitalized, because I think it's important as we move and as a developing country, that we must get to that point where we can be able to do so many things at home. I think COVID-19 has provided, I guess, and in my opinion, a jump start to a lot of this digitalization process, because it shows that it's needed. It shows the world has proven and seen that you can be effective and efficient working at home or doing this or that. Once you have your laptop and internet, you can be just as effective as in office. And I think that's the transition where, as a country, we must continue to go, because it's important. I sit down, as we say, like, you should be able to get your driver's license, you do all that online, a renewal, all these stuff instead of this long lines and mundane process. And these are some of the things that myself, as a young Bahamian in the political spectrum right now, seeing the needs, seeing the cry, that this is some of the stuff that we need to do. If we want to be effective, if we want to feel more revitalized as a country and proud that we can say, man, look here, we have all these stuff in our country, we could do this, and not just like how it's done in any other developed country in this world. And I think that is the key, is that the mindset of Bahamians must feel as if that we are in competition not with just ourselves and not just the region, but we are in competition with the world.
Absolutely. And well, one of the major, another digitalization initiative that's ongoing now is the sand dollar.
Yes.
Right? And I think, really one of the main drivers behind the central bank's the project, the sand dollar project, is financial inclusion, right? So we're talking about bringing those who are on the outskirts of society economically and even physically, and family islands where there's no banks, bringing them deeper and more inclusive into the economy, right? Have you seen any of the businesses coming across your desk seeking to engage in the sand dollar initiative, right? To really get into the digital commerce side of the business?
Yeah, well, the companies that really do see the necessity for digital commerce, something that I think we need to do more work on in terms of getting tapped in, because we have a population of our country that is unbanked. As you know, many of the family islands have no physical banks, have sometimes it's very limited access to cash, and so these are very important parts of our society and country that must be addressed. If you go to some southern islands, you go to Auckland or Cricket Island, there's no ATM. There's 2 flights a week, Wednesday and Saturday. So if you go down there Wednesday and you run out of their cash, Thursday night, Friday day, you have no cash, right? No ATM until Saturday when the plane come on, you could be able to go or something like that. So there's some avenues and some companies that have been down there, such as Sun Cash and whatever, trying to fill that void, but there's still a greater demand for it. And that's something that must be looked at. And I think that's one of the key things moving forward, that, that in terms of innovation must be done, must be looked at. We must live in a digital realm now. We have a lot of persons like myself, and I would imagine others that, we have limited cash on us at any given time. We have our cards, we do this, we do that. It's just an easier way of doing business. And I think that's very important. And I think it's something that must be heavily looked upon and must be pretty much capitalized on.
Indeed. Well, I mean, money is the grease of the economy.
Yes.
Right? And so, yeah, I thought it was important that we touch on that, because the central bank has put so much effort into developing the technology. And we see that it's now available, but there's been basically a very slow uptake in the adoption rate. Yeah. So it'd be great if we see any businesses that that come through across your desk, benefiting from your financing initiatives. Yeah. So on a more, I guess, like, we could take a little step back, and on a broader note, what else are we missing in this country in terms of our economic development formula? What are some of the gaps that we need to address?
I think some of the gaps that we need to address, from an economic standpoint, is that we have to be able to see that funding is going to be very important. And I think that's a lot of the cry of small, medium, and large size businesses. But it's also being able to find a great supplier, you know. So I think that's a big thing in terms of finding viable suppliers. You know, like I give the example, you know, when I was in college, you know, the whole idea was the economic crash based on the automobile industry in America. But the automobile industry in America, that was only an issue because, you know, other parts of the world started buying other cars. Americans were buying American cars, but the world was shifting. And so that is why their economy took that hit because, okay, no one else. And we saw it. And I would say, you know, I lived through it. I saw where Bahamians stopped buying American cars, started buying Asian cars, China, Japanese cars. And so that's very important, being able to put persons and businesses in access to great suppliers, whereas they can be able to dictate the cost and the demand. And I think that's very important. So I think seminars like to Dubai, to parts of Asia, whereas Bahamian businessmen be able to see that there are so many different avenues out here that they can be able to provide better products at a cheaper cost and bring them in. And so I think that has been a hindrance as well. And so we have to bridge that gap in education. And I think that's very important.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Senator Quinton Lightbourne. It's been a sensational conversation.
Yes. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And thank you, viewership. Have a good evening.